first step to being a good communicator is actually to be a really good listener. A lot of people who, when they open their mouths and say a lot of things that generally doesn't amount to much, or they say whatever's on their mind. And a lot of the times they're not really responding to anything or talking about anything important because they're not actually listening to what the other person has to say. Hi guys, this is Stella Bella. Hi everyone, welcome back to the HUBient channel. This is Stella Bella. Now, one thing I struggled a lot with growing up was how to communicate effectively, how to talk to people, how to confidently say what I'm thinking or feeling without fear of being judged. And especially coming from an Asian background, I've always been taught to be super polite, never say anything negative or bad. So when I started to get out into the real world, it was actually a little bit tough to switch that mindset to one that effectively communicates. Because if you want to succeed in the world, or if you just want to build some good relationships with people, whether it's friendships, work relationships, dating, marriage, you need to have good communication. And it took me a very long time to figure out some of the most important things of communicating. That's really helped me now to be able to communicate fast, effectively, and say what I need to say without holding back, without fear of judgment. So today's topic is going to be on how to effectively communicate to achieve what you want in life. So let's get started. The first step to being a good communicator is actually to be a really good listener. A lot of people who, when they open their mouths and say a lot of things that generally doesn't amount to much, or they say whatever's on their mind. And a lot of the times they're not really responding to anything or talking about anything important because they're not actually listening to what the other person has to say. First step of communicating is to make sure you're actually active listening. So not just sitting here waiting to say something, waiting to say your part, or focusing on what you want to say. Having a conversation with someone, a discussion, a meeting, anything like that, you have to make sure you're actively listening to what's being said, so you're responding with knowledge, information, and things that are cogent to the conversation. A lot of younger people, when they first go out into the real world and have real conversations, they are so anxious, waiting for a moment for when they can speak and prove themselves. And that's the thing, they're always waiting to prove themselves, that they're not really focusing on what the conversation's about. So the first step is to think about what the topic of conversation is and what's actually being said, so that whatever comes out of your mouth next is in response to things that are related to the topic and things that can help back up your point. Number 2, be prepared. So let's say you're going in for some sort of meeting or negotiation or discussion, whether it's with your friends, workplace, family, partner. Make sure you have the facts. Know what you're going to say, know the points that you want to bring up, and don't be afraid to write it down. And a lot of people are too afraid to do that in case it seems weird or it seems like they don't know what they're doing. People who are confident in themselves, people who know what they want, are not afraid to speak their mind. They are not afraid to write it down to make sure they remember all the points that they want to bring up. So don't be afraid to do that. But it is important, if you are doing some sort of formalized negotiations, particularly in the workplace, you go in there with a goal in mind, go in there with information to back yourself up so that you're not caught off guard. You can't be prepared for everything, but if you go in there with as much information as possible to state your point, especially if you're, for example, asking for a promotion or pay rise, or you're trying to resolve some sort of conflict in the workplace, go in there with all of your facts and data. Go in there with evidence. If you want to, for example, ask for a pay rise, make sure you have evidence of why you deserve it, so that if they ask you that question, you're not left stuttering away to try to defend yourself as something that's brought up that you weren't expecting. Now let's talk aesthetics. Let's talk about how we should act and look when it comes to effective communication. Eye contact, obviously a big one. And it's the easiest way for someone to know that you're not confident in yourself or what you're saying, is if you do not have eye contact with that person. I know many of us may have anxieties, or they might just not be comfortable having eye contact with the other person when they're talking. And yeah, it is a little bit strange at first, just looking at someone in the eyes while you're speaking to them. It's a little bit daunting. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be. And you'll suddenly realize that people talk to each other and have eye contact out of respect and nothing else. It's not that you're trying to intimidate them or they're trying to intimidate you. It's just a form of communication. It's a way of telling the other person that you are genuine in what you're saying, you're telling the truth, and that you can be trusted. That's the sort of communication technique that we've all grown to accept. Now, when it comes to body language, obviously things like folded arms, scratching, fidgeting, that sort of thing, take out, because it just means whatever it is that you're saying, it doesn't look convincing and you don't look confident at all. Even practice in front of the mirror if you have to, but roll your shoulders back, hold a nice strong posture when you're talking. And if you are prone to having fidgeting hands, create a habit of just clasping them together and then just holding them underneath your chest or whatever is comfortable. If you have a phone, maybe you prefer to just hold onto your phone so you have something to hold onto so you're not really fidgeting. Just make sure you're not fidgeting on your phone either. But whatever it is, the more you move around and fidget, and I'm talking about just the little things, the more uncomfortable you'll look. Now, movement is fine. So fidgeting is different to movement. So you can be quite animated in your gestures when you speak, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, the more animated and the bigger and stronger those gestures are, the more confident you'll look, and that's perfectly fine. So right now I'm deliberately doing some gestures just to show you what the confident gestures are versus the small fidgety ones that might make people feel like you're a bit nervous when you speak to them. Yeah, so big gestures are fine as long as you're not whacking people in the face, and don't go over the top. Sometimes it just comes naturally, and sometimes you don't even need it. Sometimes it's fine to just sit back, clasp your hands together, and just have the conversation. Whatever it is, practice in front of the mirror. Make sure you're comfortable first before releasing out into the world. But after doing it a few times, you'll realize it's not as daunting as you think it is. Now, another tip that will really help you with effective communication is, and it's pretty obvious, but being honest. The people that I've seen have the most trouble communicating their thoughts and feelings and being effective are generally people who are trying to hide things, or they're too afraid to say what they're thinking. So as they're talking, they're trying to think of ways to reword what they're thinking, or they're trying to say what they're thinking without actually saying it, which of course means there's lag time, you're gonna stumble over your words, you're gonna stutter, it's not gonna be very effective. And by the end, the person who's supposed to receive the message isn't receiving anything at all because the whole conversation was so confusing. Be honest with yourself, and don't be afraid to speak your mind. When you're talking, when you're in a social setting, having a conversation, and someone says something you don't agree with, you can very respectfully say what you think without offending them. So you don't have to and ah and study your way through what you want to say. Be confident that every single person have their own different opinions, and it's okay to say what you think. In fact, it might start a really meaningful discussion amongst your peers and your group of friends, and they'll be really thankful for it. Now, another tip, and this is of course very important when it comes to communicating, is being loud and clear. The way you present your words when it comes to communicating, and we're talking about vocal communication here. When it comes to communicating, the way you talk, the volume, the way you speak, your diction, all of that plays a big part in making sure your message is heard. So it is important to make sure you're loud enough, clear enough, and confident enough in what you're saying so that the other people can understand or even hear you. A lot of people, when they first start trying to bring out their points, they are so whisper quiet because they feel like if I say what I think and it's loud, then it's double bad. But no, if you say what you think, it's perfectly fine. But if nobody hears it, it's just annoying to the other person, right? If they didn't like your opinion and you're trying to say it very, very quietly, so then they have to ask you to repeat it multiple times, it actually makes the situation a little bit worse. So be loud and clear, be strong in what you're saying. And if you're gonna say it and the other person doesn't agree and you're saying it in a really quiet way, then there's even more grounds for them to pick on your views because you're not even confident with it. So if you're gonna say something, say it loud, say it proud. And don't be afraid to be wrong, because if somebody tells you, oh, actually that's not the case, you're wrong about this because of this and this, just say, oh, thank you, I didn't realize. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. That's it. Not the end of the world if you're wrong. And any arguments that get started from it, you are free to walk away yourself. So don't feel like you saying what you want to say or you giving your opinion is such a frightful thing. No, if you say your opinion and the other person has a problem with it, as long as you're being respectful when you're saying it, and you're not insulting anybody. But if you say your opinion and the other person has a problem with it, then they're the ones with the problem, not you. Last but not least, of course, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Communicating effectively is not something that you can just step out and do first time, first try. I mean, some people maybe they're born with that sort of charisma and charm that can just get them through any conversation. from the day they were born. But for most of us mortals, it does take practice. And sometimes it takes having those weird conversations and awkward social moments for us to learn to not say or do something the next time. And with practice, it will only get better. But the first step is not to be afraid to give it a go. If you are nervous, especially if it's a group of friends that are brand new or you're in a brand new setting, then try it with people that are close to you first, people that you trust. Try the techniques. Try looking at them in the eyes, talking to them normally, saying what's on your mind, being loud and clear so you're not stumbling over your words. Give that a go a few times, have a bit of a practice, then take that out to the real world with people that you don't know and have a bit of a practice. And actually sometimes practicing on a complete stranger will give you that confidence, because if it backfires, no harm, no foul, it's fine. You don't know that person, you never have to see them again. But if it works great, then you can try it with people who are acquaintances or people that you've always been a little bit scared to talk to, but now you can with a bit of practice. Okay, so how many points was that? However many it was, those are my tips on how to effectively communicate. As somebody who struggled with communicating effectively when I first went out into the real world, when I first finished school and I had to speak to people in a public setting, in a social setting, those are the tips that have really helped me, that I've developed over the past years to make sure now I am actually saying things, communicating things the way I feel comfortable with, and getting the message across so that I can get what I want without wasting time, without holding back my opinions and not being able to say how I think or feel, which then of course leads you to your path of success, because you're now able to communicate what you want out of life. You're able to tell people how you think, feel, what you want from them as well. And having those tougher, more awkward conversations without avoiding it and without feeling bad from it. So hopefully that's helped. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave it down below. Please make sure to click like, subscribe, and follow on our social media. We are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We would love to hear from you. And of course, follow me on social media as well. I am on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok under stellabella.au. I would love to hear from you as well. Any questions, any topics you want me to talk about in future, please DM me, let me know, and I look forward to speaking with you next time. Hope you have a wonderful week and practice your communication strategies and let me know how you go. Bye.